All right, and we are live with the very last session of the Plan With Me live series. I decided to just kind of go live. What at this point, 50 minutes early, and you're just gonna get my webcam here today because I am actually in the midst of moving, so you get to see my whole kind of messy kitchen and tiny home that's just a mess right now. I just didn't have time to set up my whole normal live stream setup. So just bear with me in terms of the noisy visuals. But I do have my plant here. I brought it over here just for some, aesthetic value there. And we are going to just dive in. So this last session basically is a continuation of the previous session. So I'm calling this Create Systems Part 2. And it's important to sort of take a look back at what we have created so far in terms of the systems, right? So if you've been with me from the very beginning, then I laud you and absolutely commend you for, making the progress here with me. So we spent some time using the Ikigai as a tool to define your life purpose and to explore it, right? And to sort of extract what kind of meaning there is there. We wrote down your dream for the year, and then out of that, we set an intention, we set a goal and a set of practices. And then today, what we're going to do is we're going to use that and apply that to two different areas of your life. On a professional level, to your creative projects, and on a personal level, to the different spheres or areas of your life. And then I just want to bring your attention to how small the word goal here is, right? This is why I call it goals versus systems, because a goal really is a part of a system and it's just one component of many other components. And last week, in fact, we talked about the difference between goals and practices. If you missed that part, then go back and watch session 3. I just don't want to repeat myself here. Today, we're going to talk about the difference between goals and projects. So the goal, like I said, it's a peak event. It's like getting to the mountaintop, whereas the project itself is the whole mountain. What I mean by that is, getting to that mountaintop it's something that's really appealing to the kind of corporate drone type stereotypically, right? It's about checking that box and then getting to the peak and then taking the selfie so you can say and brag to others that you have conquered, right? And there's a huge sense of accomplishment there. But I think as creatives, we are much more interested in having an experience where we're making art because we want to not just conquer, but we want to be creating, and the mountain as a metaphor is really apt because there are literal pieces of art that are out there that have been inspired by real mountains, like in this case Yosemite Valley. And this is something that spans time periods as well as different cultures and as well as forms of mediums, right? Not just painting, but writing as well. It's a spew of books that have been inspired by mountains. And in fact, 4 of these have gone on to become either award-winning or commercially successful films. And so I just want to emphasize how cool that is, that as creatives, we're much more interested in the whole mountain itself, because we want to do things like paint it, we want to write about it, we want to take photos of it, we want to make movies about it. This is what I mean by taking a project-oriented approach versus a goal-oriented approach. We don't just want to get to the top and then move on. We want to soak up that whole mountain and make fucking art. Okay, so there's this old saying too, making a mountain out of a molehill. And I just kind of want to twist it around to our advantage and say, projects are about creating meaning out of the mountain. So what does a projects list look like? This is my sort of final projects list. I know it's a lot to take in. It's like kind of overwhelming to see just at a single glance, but I just kind of wanted to show you this is what you'll end up with if you have a playbook. And if you don't, then you can still do this, of course. I'm just going to walk you through the different components of what all this is made up of and what exactly is going on here. So a projects list is very important to have as a creative. And these are the 3 components. The first, of course, is you need to list them out. The second is we're going to set a focus for each of those projects. And the last part that we're going to do is we're going to prioritize them by rating them and then ranking them. So if we focus first on just listing them, this is what it looks like for me. So I have three kind of big projects this year. First of all, it's my business, Creative Warriors. The second is my YouTube channel. And then the third is Treasure, which is the name of my graphic and web design business. And then you'll see to the left of each of those are what I call project codes. They can be 2 to 4 letter codes to sort of help you refer to your projects in shorthand. And this is going to come in handy later on, which I'll explain in a little bit. This level of detail is good. It's as a starting point, but we also need to dive into, okay, making sure that all of our bases are covered. So I like to go into what I call sub projects. And what that looks like, if we revisit that, is, I have things on the left hand side like Shopify, which is the e-commerce component of my website for Creative Warriors. And on the right hand side, I have things like email marketing and coaching and the online course. These are all sub projects, sub components of my business, Creative Warriors. And then if you have a YouTube channel or Instagram account or whatever, you might have things that are, in my case, series that I'm producing as part of my YouTube channel. So it's helpful to delineate and break them out into a little bit more detail. So I have these 2 video series that I've been working on. Digital Renaissance Man, that's going to be something that I'm going to be premiering later this year. And then Creative Ownership, I started working on that last month. I want to continue to make progress. And these are both series that are part of the larger project that I'm calling my YouTube channel. And by the way, if you haven't checked out Creative Ownership, make sure you do that. It's pretty cool. I'm proud of it. And then if you have a client-oriented creative services business like I do as a graphic designer, maybe you're an illustrator, maybe you're a photographer, if you have regular clients, you might want to write down the names of each of those clients as your sub-projects. So I did exactly that here for my graphic design business for Treasure. So now this should not look as overwhelming, right? So you can see the components here. So the code name, the name of the project, and that just repeats itself. And so if you have a blank notebook, you want to follow this structure and then just leave a little bit of room between each project name so you can set the project focus, and then we'll go into the other components later in a little bit. So the next part, like I said, is setting the focus for each of the projects. So if we go back to our list, for email marketing, for example, it's something like, I want to solidify my strategy for my email marketing, or I want to focus on running my first cohort as a beta for my coaching program. Or lastly, I want to start planning the trip to Yellowstone with my friend Rick, where I plan on shooting the online course. So this goes on, right? So for live streams, which is what you're watching right now, so I put down here as my focus, continuing to learn and experiment, establish community, and a regular monthly cadence. For YouTube, I wrote down establish a consistent content workflow, 1 new piece of content published per week. So I'm stating that publicly so you can now hold me accountable to that. And you can combine high level and specificity. So in Creative Warriors, I wrote down here that I want to grow and stabilize sales of the playbook. That's relatively high level. And I really wanted to nail down some figures there so that I know easily off the top of my head what I'm aiming for this year. So I wrote down these numbers: 80 per month, 20 per week, 4 per day, right? And that all works out essentially to about the same math, but I just wanted to have those figures so that I could memorize that for this year and have something that's easy to refer back to. So that's essentially it, for setting a focus. They're kind of like goals, if you will, in between goals and intentions. They can be specific, they can be broad. It's whatever comes forth for you. And I can tell you from experience, being able to look at a spread like this and seeing that I have actually done the work to set the focus for each of these projects in my creative career is just so empowering and incredibly grounding. So I know it does take work and time to do this, but it's absolutely worth it. And then the last part is creating ratings, setting ratings for each of your projects so that you know how to prioritize your projects on a higher level. And we're going to use a familiar tool for that. We're going to use the Ikigai. So for those of you who were with me from the very beginning, and you actually did the work to set your life purpose using the Ikigai, what you want to do is, or what we are going to do here is we're going to set, we're going to ask ourselves the 4 questions of the Ikigai. So how passionate am I about this project? So we're applying that to the project specifically rather than as a big, broad kind of question about our life. How good am I at this project? How much does the world need the project that I'm working on? And then how well could I get paid through this project? Okay, and then you'll note that each of them has a slightly different scale, right? So passion has a scale of 1 to 40, whereas how well paid can I be has a scale of 1 to 10. And that's because as creatives, we need to be passion led. And if we're not, then we end up burning out because we're just being extrinsically motivated rather than being intrinsically motivated, which is just super duper duper important as anything that involves creativity. So I wanted to go and share with you the ratings that I have, right? So at the very top of the list, at a perfect 100, which is rarely ever happens. I did not expect this to happen, but this is the cool thing about doing the Ikigai ratings is that sometimes you end up with these surprising results that are really deeply clarifying. So the project here is the product design for my product, the playbook. And this ended up scoring a perfect 100. The goal isn't to get a perfect 100 for everything. The goal is to be honest with yourself, right? So that to me says that, okay, I need to prioritize product design more than I have previously in the past. And I used to think up until today when I was doing this that, oh, okay, I can sort of put this on the back burner because it's just not as urgent, right, to bring back a metaphor from the Eisenhower matrix. And this to me now says that it is something that I should be prioritizing. Now on the lower end, something like live streams, which I thought was going to score higher, actually only scored 72. This is something that I'm really passionate about. So this scored a 40, but I am still very much learning this technology, and I still feel like I'm refining my whole process for live streaming. So this scored lower on the scale here at 15 out of 30, right? Yeah, out of 30. And so you can see that that's why it only scored to 72. And this is really interesting because this is very close in number, in final number. This 72 is close to the 75 for email marketing. But the difference between these two is, I have a 40 for passion for live streams, but a 29 for passion for email marketing. This is not something that I'm like super duper passionate about, but I'm interested in it. I want to learn about it. But I do feel that I'm better at it with a 24 because I've done it in the past. At least from a designer's perspective, I just have more to learn in terms of the strategy and the business side of it. So it's just really interesting because this is the part that's very clarifying when you do the Ikigai ratings is you're essentially quantifying something that is quite subjective, and I always find that very fascinating, the meeting between the objective and the subjective. Obviously these numbers aren't the be all end all, and we shouldn't take them too seriously, but they're numbers that we can grab onto that give us clues. So they scored on the lower end for me. This one a little bit higher than this one. But yeah, that tells me that I'm like, okay, there are things that I shouldn't be prioritizing as much as the ones that are that I highlighted in purple. That's the other thing that you can do is highlight the ones that, I have a whole highlighting system here where I have, from here to here, the most important to the least important, essentially. So you can see purple is what I used to highlight for Creative Warriors, for online course at 95, playbook at 100, Creative Warriors at Life, that's my website at 96, and then my Digital Renaissance Man series at 95. These all got the purple highlight. And then the step down from there is the red highlights, which I gave to coaching, and then YouTube, and it just goes on from there. Okay, so You don't have to do the highlighting step. I just like to do that for myself because I like colors and I like having fun with that. And that's something that I find very helpful. So that covers projects. That's our professional area of life. The other part of ourselves and our life is the personal. And, that's important to think about because we want to be balanced and we want to be living life holistically. So give me 1 second here, bro. My throat is very dry today for whatever reason. Okay, so for areas of life, we have our professional covered. But to really be that holistic and complete person, it's also important to think about, okay, well, how am I having fun? And who are the people who are important to me in my life and what's my relationship to them? How do I want to nurture that? How's my fitness doing? How's my nutrition doing? And then how's my money doing? My income and my expenses. How am I nurturing my intellectual curiosity? How am I taking care of myself spiritually? And, in a perfect world, all of these spheres, all of these areas of life would be, equally balanced, but we all know that that's not really the case. It really looks something more like this. And then, one season of our lives, it'll be like this. And the next season, it'll be more like this. And so it's just different emphases on different areas of life. And so let's sort of take a look at what that can end up looking like in terms of the actual exercise. So if you have a playbook, this is on page 19, and this is the areas of life exercise where you just list out, the 6 or 7 areas of life: physical, relational, financial, spiritual, intellectual, and recreational. I gave a code for each one of them. You can also get creative with this, right? So you don't have to follow this point by point, but if this is your very first time doing this, I do highly recommend following it point by point. I've done this a number of times myself, and so I decided, so for this year, I'm going to take my intellectual and recreational, combine it into one, and I'm calling it van life because for me, van life is both an intellectual and a recreational pursuit. And then just like we did with projects, you want to set a focus for each of these areas of life. For example, in my finances, I wrote down build a $10,000 emergency savings fund. And for van life, I wrote down finish design and build before Yellowstone, because that's going to be important. I want to have a good van to drive to Yellowstone with. And then part of that is learning cabinetry, learning how to make drawers and cabinets, and that's part of my intellectual pursuit. Okay, so those are areas of life. We took a look back at our systems that we're building so far. The next step beyond this is taking those projects and areas and assigning deliverables to them. Those are basically tasks or to-dos. I just like to call them deliverables because that's just what I'm used to from the agency world that I come from, the advertising agency world. And then we want to prioritize those deliverables. So if we take a look at what that looks like, even if you have a playbook, I do recommend doing this exercise in just a plain, dot grid notebook like this. So essentially what you're going to do is write down, actually let me go back to this spread because this is where the Ikigai ratings really come in handy. So like I said, my top rated one was the playbook product design. The code for that is PLB. So what I did is I wrote down PLB, and then I thought, okay, off the top of my head, what's the first thing that I need to do, the second thing that I need to do, the third thing that I need to do, and these are all the things that came to me. This is as of complete of a list as you should be able to come up with at the moment. You'll add to this later on. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be totally 100% complete for the time being. It's just your best attempt for right now. Okay. And so I did that for my PLB project playbook. And then I went on to my next highest rated project, which is at 96, creativewarriors.life. That's my website. And so I went through and wrote down all the things that I need to do for my website this year. And then OC, which is online course. And this scored a 95, so 1 point lower than that. And so these are all the things that I wanted to do or need to do for my online course. And you're basically going to do that for every single one of these projects. I know that seems like a lot of work, and it does take time. I'm not going to lie to you. But again, such a sense of satisfaction when you're able to look at a spread like this and be able to see, okay, wow, these are all the things that I need to be doing, or at some point, right? That comprise of the projects that I want to be taking on this year and the things that need to get done for them. Now, it's a lot to look at, right? It's a lot to look at, this just raw list of deliverables. So you should have noticed by now, these numbers that I've written down. I know that's like another layer of information here, which we're gonna break down. I'm gonna show you what exactly that means. So those numbers are a simplified version of the Eisenhower matrix. And those of you who already are familiar with this, just bear with me so that I can explain this to those of you who have never heard of this before. So there is a prioritization tool called the Eisenhower matrix, which is popular in the business world, popularized by a guy named Stephen Covey, who's like this productivity guru, who got this from President Eisenhower, who during his term as president, when he had to do all the things that he had to do during World War II, which was, I can't even imagine what it was like to try to be a president during that time. But he had obviously a lot of things on his mind that needed to get done, and a whole team to manage as well. So he came up with this way of thinking about things in terms of two axes, right? Things that are important and then things that are urgent. And they're plotted onto this matrix, this quadrant, right? So what this means is that if you have a task, you sort of ask yourself, okay, where would it fall upon this matrix of importance and urgency? So things in the bottom left-hand corner are going to be things that are neither important nor urgent. And then we go on. So then there are things that are still not important, but they're urgent. And then there are tasks that are important, but they're not urgent. Like, for example, planning. This whole series is very important stuff, but it's not really super urgent, which is why a lot of people don't end up undertaking it. And it's sad because it's something that you just kind of procrastinate on. These are the things that are just easy to delay. And then there are those things that are both important and urgent. Those are the things that almost always end up getting done if we don't get distracted by the things that are urgent but not important. Okay, so that's the Eisenhower matrix. However, as helpful as this is, I have found it to be a little rigid in terms of trying to plot deliverables or to-dos onto, okay, which of the four squares do I put my next task on? I don't know, I'm not sure. And so I found that it's much better to think about it in terms of numbers on a scale rather than a matrix. I'm going to explain how that works in a second. The second thing about the Eisenhower matrix is that I find the word importance a little bit too close in meaning to urgency. And, in coaching a lot of people through this, I have found it a lot more clarifying and delineating to say impact rather than importance, because there's a bigger kind of divide between impact versus importance versus, impact versus urgency versus importance versus urgency. So it's just a lot more clarifying, I think. So if we take the first task that I wrote down, gather feedback for the first edition of the playbook, this is how I'd apply it in terms of numbers, right? So the first thing that we want to look at is impact. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most impactful, how impactful is this task? And I wrote down a 5. And then in terms of urgency, this is something that will become more urgent over time because I need to finish this essentially by April-ish. It's not a 1, so it's not like not important at all. Or sorry, not urgent at all. See how I did that again? But it's not super duper urgent, right? So it's not a 5. And if we were to add those numbers up, we end up with a total of 8. Now, this is interesting, and this is why I like this method, is that the total can end up being a maximum of 10 because, the maximum for both impact and urgency is 5. And so this is just a nice, easy way using easy numbers to apply the Eisenhower matrix as a framework to all of the tasks in your priorities list. So let's take a look at what that looks like on a practical level. Like I said, that's that first task here, is gather feedback for the first edition. I gave that a 5.3. We end up with an 8. These all continue, right? I haven't totaled all of these up yet, but if I were to say here, okay, for my website, I wrote down Ask Enzo, who's my representative at the warehouse, is the basic plan for a Shopify okay? And I gave it a score of 4 plus 4, so that ends up with 8. And I forgot to mention to you, essentially what you want to do is create these little boxes and just kind of go through. For each of these boxes, write down this little slash here, and you'll see here I wrote down I in the upper left-hand corner and U in the bottom right-hand corner. So for here, for example, I'm going to just rewrite this. Design the second edition. This is the name of the task that I'm writing down. And so you want to go through each of your tasks and give them a rating in this little box right here. So how impactful is this? I gave it a 5, so I'll write down 5 there. And then how urgent is this? This is not as urgent. It's less urgent than gathering feedback for the first edition because I have to do this first before doing this. So I gave that a 3. In this case, I will give this a 2. Right, so when we add these numbers up, super easy, 5, 6, 7. And then what you want to do is ideally just circle that number so it's easy to come back to when you're reviewing this again. So you'll see here I have all these numbers circled, so when I flip to this spread again, it's just easy to see from a glance, okay, which one scored the highest versus which one scored the lowest. And the interesting thing that I also find, and this is the reason why I use this numbering system, is because there are things that score the same in terms of the total. Like, for example, here, testing the Shopify integration is an 8, but here, designing the Pocket Commonplace book also scores an 8. But the method that they got to the 8, the numbers that they used to get to the 8 is different. This is a 5.38, whereas this is a 4.48. So this tells me that this is an impactful 8, a more impactful 8, whereas this is a more urgent 8, right? So if you want to get down to that level of granularity that gives you that clarity, this is great for that. And you basically want to go through, give everything a rating here, give everything a total. And again, if you want, you can do, use my recommended method of highlighting, the ones that score the highest. So the 10s and the 9s might get a purple, and then the 8s and the 7s might get the red one. So you end up with a really nice kind of highlighted list of priorities. And in fact, I want to show you, I started to do that. This is an incomplete version, but I do that on a daily basis, actually. So you can sort of see here, these are 10s, so they get the purple strike. And then this is a 9, so that gets a yellow. And that's just kind of a cool way to prioritize things for those of you who are visual like myself. Okay, so then that's basically it in terms of the sessions, right? Like we went through, we reviewed last year, we reviewed 2023. You should have your ikigai in terms of your life purpose. You have a dream for this year. You channel that into an intention as well as a goal and a practice. And now we should be clear about what your projects and your life areas are. I don't want to completely leave you hanging though, because it's sort of like, okay, well, what do I do? Like, what do I do with this? Well, what you do is on a daily basis, look at that list and decide, okay, which are the ones that have the highest score, and then write down, you know, at the most the three that you can accomplish for today. That's the best way that the best piece of advice that I can give you in between now and the next live stream. I do plan on live streaming once a month throughout 2024 so that we can check in with each other, hold each other accountable. And in February, the theme will be weekly planning, and then in March, it'll be daily planning. So stay tuned for those upcoming. I hope that you found this useful, enjoyable, fun, helpful. Let me know in the comments below any questions that you might have. In fact, I don't see any comments here for the live stream so far. And yeah, make sure to order a copy of the playbook if that's something that you're interested in. It's just creativewarriors.life, and would love to have you join the tribe. And thank you so much to all of you who have joined me for every single session up until this point. And by the time that I live stream next time in February, then I hope that well, actually I hope I don't I intend to have a much nicer background here, so that's part of the reason why I'm moving, is to have an actual room that I can, you know, really set well for a live stream setup. So yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you in February.